Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about two soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is Joe DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Joe, what are this week's games?
Up first is 2016's Dead by Daylight, the asymmetrical multiplayer horror game that started as a game full of homages to the world of slasher films, but evolved into what is now referred to as the Smash Brothers of horror.
Following that is the three-pronged story in the Paldea region, bringing more of an open world, and all of the technical problems that go with it, to the famed monster-catching franchise's 9th generation, 2022's Pokémon Scarlet and Violet. Not too much in common between these two games, but here on Halloween, the day of this episode's release, to end Spooky Season 2023, we've got games that had 3 starting characters at launch, if you want to tie it that weirdly, or if you want to just throw all rules out the window. Both of these games, including Scarlet and Violet, the titles for these games all end in T.
Yeah, it turns out the game where somebody plays as a violent killer to kill other players and the Pokemon game made for children don't have a lot in common.
But at least you get one more spooky game in there to round off this month. Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
So the only thing I have really played substantially in the past week or so has been a game I mentioned was coming out last week. It didn't come out last week. It came out earlier this week. I did not realize it had gotten delayed a few days, probably because it was originally supposed to release on the same day as Spider-Man and Mario. So they pushed it back to October 23rd. It is called Slay the Princess. It is essentially, it's a visual novel, but a very stylized visual novel. And the premise is you are on a path in the woods. At the end of that path, there is a cabin. And in that cabin, there is a princess. Your job is to kill her, because if she gets out, she's going to end the world. And it starts like that. And it's got a bunch of branching things and a bunch of decisions that change a lot. And then there is a shoe drop. And I stopped right at the shoe drop. But it's a very interesting shoe. And I'm very interested to see where it goes from here.
That's interesting. You gotta love when games seem simple at first. And then have that kind of contextual big twist there. I like the sound of that. So I beat Assassin's Creed Mirage. I had a really good time with it. I did the 100% completion of the map, and that took me 20 hours overall. If I still wanted to do platinum trophy stuff, there's a lot of kill these many people in this kind of weird way with this tool. And I'm like, I'm not going to necessarily do that. Had a good time with it. I like this size of Assassin's Creed game. That being said, if anyone did not finish Valhalla and tried to go into Mirage, is like, I haven't played Assassin's Creed in a while. If you don't know the big twist there, you're going to be lost if you don't have any Valhalla context beforehand. That ending presumes a lot of knowledge on the player's part. I then picked up Marvel's Spider-Man 2 on a, you got to pick between Spider-Man 2 and Super Mario Brothers Wonder, and I picked Spider-Man 2. Only a few hours into it. We haven't even gotten to any of the Venom stuff yet. Honestly, the hunt blinds just opened up on the map. Spider-Man 2 is doing that same thing where they're really slow rolling the side content out. Just bits and pieces so that you can't do what I do and unlock the whole map right away. There's just not enough things to do. Because you have to do certain things in each of these 14 districts in New York City. If you do a certain amount of things, you then unlock the really sweet fast travel system for that area that they have going on. It's super impressive. So yeah, still really early on in Spider-Man 2, but really enjoying it.
I wish I could play Spider-Man 2. One of these days I'll get to.
I hope that for you as well. I'm a little scared right now about internet spoilers, so I may maybe heads down in it pretty soon.
I haven't been spoiled at all, actually, yet. I'm trying to think. I haven't seen like anybody talk about the story. I know a couple people have said like, yeah, the story's but like it's fun to play. I haven't seen anybody say it's not fun to play, which I mean it damn well better be. They already have the fun systems made for those games.
Yeah, I think that's the important part. And then, the video game releases don't stop. As we're recording, Alan Wake 2 review embargoes are up, and that's getting as good of reviews as Spider-Man 2 and Mario Wonders. So, what a time for the Keeleys at the end of the year and video game awards in general. Though that's going to be an interesting wrinkle of how Alan Wake 2 will launch on the 27th, digital only. So,
All right. We don't really have any composer follow-up news. Once again, we are recording early in the week. It turns out October is cursed, and we haven't been able to record on the day we usually record a single time this month. Every single time we get to that, it turns out something is happening for one of us, and we have to record in the middle of the week.
And we don't want to do solo episodes on spooky season. It kind of defeats the point a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't want to miss any October episodes for sure, because this is my time. It's my time to shine. Past this, the rest of the year is a lost cause, but So let's go ahead and just jump into my game, which is, of course, Dead by Daylight, which originally released for PC on June 14th, 2016. It then released on PS4 and Xbox One on June 20th, 2017 in North America, and then June 22nd in Australia, and June 23rd in Europe. It would come out on the Switch on September 24th, 2019. I played a demo of that version at PAX. Or no, it was at E3. Oh man, that was at E3. Oh. Don't buy that one. Just take my word for it. The Switch is not where you want to play this game. Android and iOS, which I did not know it was on, released on April 17th, 2020. Came out, of course, on the wonderful and triumphant Google Stadia on October 1st, 2020. Then there was an Xbox Series X and S release on November 10th, 2020, PS5 November 12th, 2020 in North America, and then November 19th in Europe. And those are all of the releases of Dead by Daylight thus far. It was developed by Behavior Interactive and published by Wikipedia lists like 4 publishers, but doesn't specify any versions. So it lists 505 Games, Deep Silver, Starbreeze Studios, and Behavior themselves. I don't know if that means they self-published in some countries. I don't know what countries they would have. It doesn't specify. So what is Dead by Daylight? Well, it is an asymmetrical multiplayer horror game. Now, anybody listening that is not super keyed into games might be asking, what does asymmetrical multiplayer mean? Well, it is a multiplayer game in which the sides are uneven in terms of numbers, power. Sometimes they have different goals. Most of the time they have different goals, or they have different mechanics between the two. In Dead by Daylight's case, a game consists of 4 survivors and 1 killer. And the general gist of Dead by Daylight's plot, there's a lot of lore behind Dead by Daylight, apparently. But it's all in, like, item descriptions and stuff. Kind of like Dark Souls, but not really, because you're not finding the items and such, you're just unlocking them. But the general premise is that the survivors have been trapped by an eldritch being known as the Entity, who has pulled both them and the killers out of reality and pitted them against each other. The killers have been instructed to find and sacrifice the survivors to the Entity, while survivors have been given a hope of escape, which the Entity can also still feed on as well. So, the way around in Dead by Daylight works. The 4 survivors have one shared goal, and that is to escape, to get out of there. And in order to do that, they have to repair 5 generators, of which there are 7 generators scattered across the map. And while repairing a generator, they will be presented with skill checks. And basically the way those work, a ring appears on screen with a little check that's moving around the circle. You've seen stuff like that before. And there's a shaded section of the ring, and you have to stop the little pip when it's in the shaded section. And if you do that, then you can continue repairing. And if you fail that, the generator has a small explosion, and it doesn't break the generator, but it's kind of hard to hide from a killer when the thing in front of you has now exploded. It makes a lot of noise. And so your location has now been given away. You don't want to be by that generator anymore. Once all 5 generators have been repaired, the survivors can now open the exit gates. And once open, there is now a timer for them to get away, with them being forcibly killed if still in the stage when that timer hits 0. And they must do this while also avoiding being killed by the killer, whose goal is, of course, to kill the survivors, hence the killer. In order to do this, a killer must pursue said survivors and strike them twice. Usually, some skills make it only once, which will put that survivor in a prone state, at which point the killer can then pick them up and put them on one of the many hooks scattered across the map. And while it is possible for a survivor to pull themselves off a hook, it's also very unlikely that it'll actually happen. It's really, really hard. So most of the time, if you're going to get off a hook, it's because your teammates came over and pulled you off. The second time you are hooked, though, now there are skill checks involved, and if you fail those skill checks, goodbye. And you can still be pulled off the hook at that point, but waiting becomes a bit harder. And if you're hooked a third time, you're done. Game over. You're dead. So while the killer is generally slightly faster than the survivors, survivors have more movement options. Survivors can vault over some obstacles, like through windows or over small waist-high walls, while the killer can merely slowly step over them. Some of them don't just slowly step over them, some of them jump through or something, but it's generally slower than what a survivor can do. There are also pallets throughout the stage, which are a big part of Dead by Daylight, because the survivors can drop a pallet to block the killer's path, but what you actually want to do is you want to drop the pallet while the killer is already walking through the path it would have blocked, because then they're stunned. And the killer can destroy the pallets, but only after they're dropped, I believe. I don't think they can destroy them ahead of time. But that's a much slower process, because they have to usually stomp it, I guess, 3 times before it breaks. And that's essentially the gameplay of Dead by Daylight. That's how it goes. So in terms of the roster of survivors and killers, it's mainly made up of original survivors and original killers. In fact, when the game launched, as we said with the theme, the 3 starting killers were the Trapper, the Wraith, and the Hillbilly. However, a lot more have been added since then, and Dead by Daylight is often referred to as the Smash Brothers of Horror, and that's because its roster also contains multiple characters and locations from various licensed properties that can be purchased via DLC. For instance, all the killers, if you might notice, have a the blank name alongside their real name, just so you're aware of that when I say some of the killers' names. The very first DLC to be released for the game, licensed-wise, was Michael Myers, or The Shape, and Laurie Strode from Halloween, alongside a Haddonfield map. Bill Overbeck from Left 4 Dead was added for free as a survivor. Leatherface, the Cannibal, from Texas Chainsaw Massacre was added as a killer. Freddy Krueger the Nightmare and Quentin Smith from The Nightmare on Elm Street, alongside a Springwood map. Amanda Young, the pig, and David Tapp from Saw, alongside a Gideon meat plant map. They added Ash Williams from Evil Dead as a survivor. Ghostface, the Ghostface, technically from Scream. We'll get into why that's technically later. I find it really interesting. Let's just say he's from Scream for now. The Demogorgon, Steve Harrington and Nancy Wheeler from Stranger Things, alongside a Hawkins Laboratory map. Though it should be noted, this DLC can no longer be bought. The license agreement ran out with Netflix, so the DLC got pulled down. If you already own it, you can still play as them, but you cannot buy it anymore, which sucks. Pyramid Head, the Executioner, and Cheryl Mason from Silent Hill, alongside a Midwich Elementary School map, which is like 1-to-1 almost, and I love it. Everybody else hates it. Apparently it's a very disliked map. Nemesis, the Nemesis, and Leon Kennedy and Jill Valentine from Resident Evil, alongside an RCPD building map. You have Pinhead, the Cenobite from Hellraiser, Sadako the Onryo, and Yoichi Asakawa from The Ring, or Ringu. I had forgotten that Sadako was in the game. Albert Wesker, the Mastermind, and Ada Wong and Rebecca Chambers from Resident Evil, alongside a rework that, apparently there was an issue with the RCPD map when it came out, being that it's too goddamn big. So they split it into 2 maps. The weirdest of all, Nicolas Cage, not a character played by Nicolas Cage, like the person Nicolas Cage, was added as a survivor. That's one of the most recent additions. And most recently, though, in August of this year, the Xenomorph and Ellen Ripley from Alien, alongside a Nostromo wreckage map, has been added as well. There has also been like DLC skins that were released for some of the original killers and survivors that changed their appearance to other characters from things such as Left 4 Dead, Crypt TV, Silent Hill, Hellraiser, Attack on Titan, Resident Evil, Alice in Wonderland, Alien, the 2010 not well-loved video game Naughty Bear. I have no idea why that is there.
I forgot that was even a thing.
Yeah, I did too until I read that part. And apparently coming in the future, there will be a skin for somebody that turns them into Eddie, who is the mascot for the band Iron Maiden. Which, I'm glad I had looked into that, because when I read Eddie, I don't know much about Iron Maiden, I don't listen to them. I kind of just figured that was a member of the band, and so I was really confused. But no, they have like a zombie-like sort of monster mascot, and that's what it is.
Well, when you just say Nicolas Cage, anything is possible.
Yeah, that's true. I don't understand how that happened. Who approached who? There are in total currently 33 killers, 32 if you don't count the Demogorgon. But again, if you own the DLC, you can still play as those characters. But again, they're not purchasable anymore. There are a lot of other mechanics in Dead by Daylight, such as like survivor skill trees and offerings that can be burnt for perks, both on the killer's side and on the survivor's side. But man, we've been in this segment long enough. I should stop talking, and I'm not going to get into the weeds of Dead by Daylight's innermost workings because I've not played it very much. So this is where I will ask, what are your experiences with Dead by Daylight?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a whole bunch of meta to go and keep things fresh.
There's so much!
I have not played Dead by Daylight. I don't really care to play an asymmetrical multiplayer game. There aren't many multiplayer games that are for me, and like this is it. This is what you get with Dead by Daylight. Of course, I do appreciate the Smash Bros. Nature of the different crossovers. It's always neat to see. You even get it popping up when the Nicolas Cage announcement does happen, and it's at Keeley's, I think it was Summer Games Fest or something like that, or maybe it was Game Awards last year. I
think it was Summer Games Fest. I think, because it came out like a month before the Xenomorph, so that would have...
Okay, that kind of checks out then. So, I mean, weird stuff like that happens, and so you see Dead by Daylight pop. Let's put it this way. It's a multiplayer game that has lasted much longer than many other multiplayer games. I mean, do we not remember Evolve at the beginning of the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 generation? And Evolve was the next Left 4 Dead, and it was going to change everything. And then
statistically, nobody remembers Evolve.
Precisely. So the fact that this 2016 game lives on and still gets new content added to it is a big accomplishment. And I know people who enjoy playing the game, so that's great. I have no idea about the music, though, so I'm interested to learn about that today.
So I have played Dead by Daylight a grand total of 2 times. The first time was there was a free weekend, and I was like, I might try that. What do you mean I can play as Michael Myers? This was mentioned in the Edith Finch episode a long time ago.
Oh, right, yeah.
1978's Halloween is my favorite horror movie of all time. I absolutely love that film. And the 2018 Halloween is also very, very good. But that was really cool. I like Michael Myers. I think it was fun. I am one of those sad people where playing as a survivor, I don't find it very fun. I don't think it's a great time. But playing as killer is really cool. And unfortunately, there's thousands of people like me. Millions, one would say. Where they all want to play killer, so good luck getting a game where you get to play killer, unless you are playing with your friends. The second time I played was when Pyramid Head was added, because I wanted to see all the Silent Hill stuff, which is how I got to go look at the map, which is genuinely almost a 1-to-1 recreation of Midwich Elementary School, which is an area in Silent Hill 1, which I found so cool. And the fact that there is now a game where Pyramid Head can, chase Leon Kennedy through the streets of Haddonfield, Illinois, is just really interesting to me. Otherwise, though, I haven't played a lot of it. Usually when I do play it, it's because our friends have been like, yeah, we're just going to make a private lobby. Because I've played a few times with randos, even on a team with friends, and boy howdy, is that not for me.
Yeah, I'm sure that's awful.
Especially when the one time I did that with our friends, the killer was the person from Saw, and within 5 minutes, I was already dead. Because I don't know how to play Dead by Daylight. And it's one of those things where it's there's just some of these people have been playing Dead by Daylight for years, and it's not like you can ask them to please stop being good at Dead by Daylight. But it makes it a little bit daunting for a beginner to get in there, unfortunately.
Do you know if the game has a mode with bots, or is it all must be human players?
As far as I'm aware, it has to be human players. I don't remember there being any bot modes at all. I don't honestly know if this game would work with bots. Generally the way it is. Maybe survivors. Killer absolutely would not work. I don't think. Because the killers are all vastly different in terms of mechanics and stuff like that. Which we will get to here in a bit, because I want to give a shout out to that. But for now, there is surprisingly little information on the actual development of Dead by Daylight, to the point where there's not even a development section on Wikipedia, which is unfortunate, but I did find some information, such as the fact that many of the game's original killers were inspired by classic horror antagonists, and then some of them ended up in the game themselves. And some of these inspirations are confirmed, and some of them are just speculation. One that is confirmed is that the Trapper is very heavily inspired by Jason Voorhees, which, if you were listening to my list of killers earlier, you might notice there's a big glaring absence, being one of the most iconic slasher film antagonists of all time, Jason Voorhees.
Wasn't that because Friday the 13th was making their own game?
Yeah, this is mainly because Friday the 13th ended up making their own asymmetrical horror game, which is apparently very good, by the way. I've never played it, but it is apparently quite good.
I heard good things about it, but it's also kind of dead, whereas this has lived on.
Yeah. It had to stop development entirely because of a rights dispute. There was a rights dispute over who actually owned the licensing rights to Jason himself, because if you've never seen the Friday the 13th movies, that hockey mask, the iconic hockey mask look, that didn't show up until the third movie. And so I guess from what I understand, and I might be remembering some details wrong, but it was basically just who owns that as opposed to who owns the other two movies' depictions of Jason.
Wild.
The people that won did not want to give the rights back to the Friday the 13th, the game people, so the game just had to shut down. Well, not shut down. I believe you can still play it, but it does not get updates anymore. Which is unfortunate, because looking at that game, you could tell that it is very much a labor of love. Like, those people really like Friday the 13th. Now, does that game being dead mean one day we might see Jason in Dead by Daylight? I don't think so. I think if we were going to see Jason in Dead by Daylight, it would have happened by now. So, unfortunately, probably not. One that is really interesting, though, is that the Hillbilly is inspired by Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, who did make it into the game later. And this was actually a result of the developers not being able to get the license to include Leatherface himself at the time. When they were working on the game before launch, they had actually asked. They wanted to put Leatherface in the game, and they were told no. So, really cool that later, they just got to do it. The nurse is potentially inspired by the nurses in Silent Hill 2. You can see the resemblance for sure. They have the same, like, fully bandaged face and stuff like that. The bunny mask worn by the Huntress could potentially be inspired by the splicers from BioShock. It looks very similar. And I personally assumed that the killer, the Legion, who is the most human-looking one, just somebody in a hoodie with a mask of a smiling face, I just assumed it was inspired by The Purge or The Strangers. But I cannot find anything mentioning either one of those films anywhere in relation to them, so maybe not. And I don't understand what this means, but apparently the Blight is inspired by Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And like I said, I want to give a shout out to how really detailed they are about making each of the licensed characters feel right and unique. Like, they put as much love into putting those characters together as Sakurai does with Smash Brothers characters. The big one for me was Michael Myers, who, if you've ever watched a Halloween film, the first half of the movie is not really scary. It's just more tense because it's all people going about their daily lives the daytime of Halloween, and Michael is just sort of watching them from afar. And they incorporated that into the game, where the only time I've ever won a game of Dead by Daylight, by the way. And the only reason this happened is because the people I was playing with didn't know how he worked, and I didn't either until I started playing. He has a mechanic where if a survivor is in eye shot of him and he can see them, then a little power meter builds up. And once it hits 3, he is now stronger and faster because he stalked the survivors before he went to kill them. And so it was really, really fun to have this moment of being in a Discord call with them as they were all playing survivors, and then being like, why is he just standing there? Why is he just looking at us? And it's because it made me stronger. But that's Halloween. That's how the Halloween films go. Pyramid Head can transport you to cages that you see in small bits of imagery in Silent Hill 2. When you play as Nemesis or Wesker, there are just zombies walking around the map. It's really, really neat. They put a ton of love into these characters. Some work out better than others. Apparently when Freddy Krueger was added, he was really, really bad. I don't know if he has been like buffed since, but he was apparently a terrible character to play when he first came out. But what is talking about a video game without talking about a little bit of controversy? In October of 2021, closely following the release of his DLC, Behavior announced that they were collaborating with the company Boss Protocol, giving them their Pinhead model to be turned into an NFT.
Oh.
This did not go over well because NFTs are a scam, and this led to the Pinhead DLC being like review bombed, essentially, bringing the rating down to mostly negative on Steam. Though, outside of that, Dead by Daylight has reviewed generally well over the years. Reviews at launch were a bit more mixed because their matchmaking was kind of bad at the start, apparently, especially for new players. And there was also an over-reliance on peer-to-peer hosting for matches, which, anybody that does not know what that means, it means you are not connecting to a server. You are connecting to each other. And if one of you has a bad connection, now all of you have a bad connection. So apparently that did not work. But as the game has gone on and grown and been updated, reviewers have generally greeted like all of the improvements with huge praise. I saw a few reviews basically claim that like, yeah, no, it is the top of asymmetrical horror games. There is no other game that can touch it. And honestly, that sounds about right. Now, within its first 2 months after launch, Dead by Daylight had already sold over 1 million copies. And then, by the end of November of that year, it had already sold 2 million copies. And then as of May 2022, which is the most recent date we have numbers for, it has sold over 50 million copies worldwide.
Oh, wow.
So it has done very, very well.
That's why it's still living. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's still going. It won the Best Canadian-Made Game Award at the Canadian Video Game Awards in 2016. Behavior is based in Quebec, as far as I am aware. And the game has found an especially large fan base in Japan, likely due to multiple of its chapters and killers being based on Japanese folklore, such as the Spirit and the Oni, who are both Japanese-themed killers. And I assume Sadako being in the game probably didn't hurt, but I assume Sadako's in the game because they have a big sort of following in Japan. If you don't know who Sadako is, just to make sure, she's the long black hair, crawls out of the TV, that kind of thing.
White dress, yeah.
Yeah. She's a very, very traditional-looking Japanese ghost. There was also a Dead by Daylight crossover event within Ubisoft's For Honor? I didn't know about this. They added cosmetic items from Dead by Daylight and then also added a mode where the player could fight the Trapper. So that's neat, I guess. Is that game still getting updates? I don't think it is.
No, I don't think so. I bet it lasted a few years. But it's, kind of right around that same time frame.
There are several spin-offs, both upcoming and already out, and I'm not just talking games, though we will talk about the games here in a second. There is a board game that released in April 2023, which seems to be the big thing now. Every big game is now making its own board game or card game. Even Kan Gao has gotten in on that. There's a comic series that focuses on the killers that make up the Legion. And in March 2023, it was also announced that a film adaptation of Dead by Daylight was now in the works. Whatever that means. In terms of games, there is a narrative-focused game currently being developed by Supermassive Games, the developers of Until Dawn. I had no idea that was happening. I could take it or leave it, I guess. Until Dawn continues to feel more and more like a fluke as they continue releasing games, though apparently The Quarry is very good.
Yeah, because what they do, the Quarry, they do the Dark Pictures anthology. So like, yeah, they've been dipping into horror things. That's not too surprising, I guess.
Yeah. Unfortunately, all of the Dark Pictures, apparently one of them is good. And all the rest are very bad. Though, I hear the Quarry is serviceable. There's also a 4-player co-op PvE game that is being developed by Midwinter Entertainment. I have no idea what that could mean, but that's all weak. Who cares? Those aren't the spin-offs you want to hear about. The spin-off you want to hear about is Hooked on You, a Dead by Daylight dating sim, which is an anime-style visual novel, this is real, in which the player can date the Trapper, the Huntress, the Wraith, or the Spirit. Again, this is a real thing. It was released in August of 2022. You can go buy it on Steam right now. And it's official, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you got to pay money for it, that means it's signed off by the developers. Okay.
Apparently, the origin is that Behavior, put out a survey of, what kind of other genres do you think would be interesting for us to touch? And they jokingly put visual novel or dating sim on there. And then a lot of people checked that.
Unsurprisingly.
So they made one. I had thought that it had released on April 1st because it feels like an April Fool's release. But nope, August. It might have been announced on April 1st. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's kind of got the Murder of Sonic the Hedgehog vibes to it in a way.
Yeah, very, very much so. So, the composer for Dead by Daylight is a man by the name of Michel F. April. It's probably pronounced April. Here's the thing. All right, I'm going to justify this for everybody. This is the most American struggle you could possibly have. They're Quebecois, which means they speak a dialect of French, mostly.
So it probably even could be April.
It could be. I have no idea. I know it's pronounced Michel. I know that. And the reason I know that is because there's a character in the House of Fata Morgana named that. And that's the only reason I know that.
Oh, good. Okay.
So, I didn't find a lot of information on him. Though he does have a website, which does have a part of his about page dedicated to his musical background. So that's good. It says, quote, born into a musical family, April officially started musical training at the age of 7, upon which he began to compose almost immediately. And at the age of 19, he was awarded the Outstanding Drum Set Player Award by Music Fest Canada. April studied with big jazz names such as Lorraine Desmarais, I would assume is how that's pronounced, I hope. Jean-Pierre Zanella, and worked with masters such as classical percussionists Thomas Cavanaugh and Ian Bernard, as well as Maestro Paolo Bellomia. And you can actually follow him on Twitter at Michel F. April. That's Michel F. April. In terms of his discography, VGMDB really only lists Dead by Daylight and another game by Behavior, which, according to his site, he has done multiple games with Behavior, being Meet Your Maker, Death Garden, and of course, Dead by Daylight. He apparently did the music for a Monsters University iOS app that had minigames in it. And then his list of credits for video games just says Betty Boop. And I googled Betty Boop video game, and the only one that came up was one on the DS. And I don't think that's the one he's talking about, but maybe it is.
BettyBoop.fandom.com. They say, Betty Boop's Double Shift is a puzzle game.
Hey, Google. Shut up.
Wow.
I just activated my damn Google Dot. Anyways, I don't think that was the game he was talking about, but that's the only game that comes up when you search Betty Boop video game.
I think that also may be the only time we've ever brought up Betty Boop on this show.
And it's probably going to be the only time we ever bring up Betty Boop on this show. Anyways, he's also done a bunch of TV shows. The ones that I recognized, he has a very extensive list on his website. So if you want to go look into more I definitely recommend you do so. But the names I recognized were The End Is Nigh, being a show with Bill Nye, American Idol, The Amazing Race, NFL Football on CBS, The Price is Right, and Let's Make a Deal. Those were, again, just the ones that I recognized. There seemed to be a lot of, like, French or Quebecois shows on the list, but there were also a bunch of other, like, shows that I sort of recognized, like Toddlers and Tiaras. I feel like I've heard that name before. I don't want to know much more about it, but I feel like I've heard the name before. So yeah, he's done a lot of TV. He's done some movies that he listed, but nothing that I really recognized. And he also lists some commercials that he has done music for. So he is generally a pretty active member of the Quebec music scene, at the very least. And for the Dead by Daylight soundtrack itself, at the same event in which it won Best Canadian-Made Game, April was also nominated for Best Original Music for his work in the game. And we're going to listen to some of that music now. So this is another one of those horror games where it's like, by itself, it's not the most interesting music to listen to. I think it's good, but it is very much made to work with a specific atmosphere and tension that can only be found while you are playing the game. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's perfect. That's great. But just be aware of that when we listen to the tracks here, though I cannot say that is the case for critical track number 1. This is Dead by Daylight Theme. So, as one would expect, this is the main theme of Dead by Daylight. It starts out with this really oppressive sort of almost stomp-like synth, like pulsing, and then turns into this very nice guitar theme, a very simple melody, but very effective in bringing across the tone of Dead by Daylight, I think, in general. It is a well-loved piece in the game, and I think that is for a reason. I think this is probably my favorite track on the Critical 5, just right off the bat. And yeah, it's enjoyable.
Definitely shifting instruments too, because then it gets into this grungy guitar. Still going with this doom 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 kind of melody going through it, but just going through the moods and the instruments, and it's neat. I like this a lot, but it does make me think of, oh well, if this is going to be the most melodic, what else do we have coming for us as mood and tension pieces during the action?
So following that, let's get into one of those then, which is critical track number 2. This is One Track Mind. Now, I want to specify, I don't really know the context in which these play here. Something you should know about the Dead by Daylight soundtrack is that every killer has their own chase music and their own, like, terror radius music and everything. Though some of it is sort of generic like this, I assume, for, like, the original killers. This feels very Silent Hill. Maybe a little bit, like, higher pace than your usual Silent Hill song of this type, but it does the same stuff as, like, implementing what sounds like machinery sounds. I'm positive there was some Silent Hill inspiration behind a lot of the stuff in this game, which, I mean, if you're going to make a horror game, that's a great place to get your inspiration. But this one stood out to me as just being this very... I would assume it is a chase song, but one of the comments mentions something about the exit gate when it is powered, so maybe this is when the gates are open and the survivors are making a break for it?
Maybe, yeah.
So, I do not know, though, but I think that, like, the very heavy, almost machine-like percussion in this song that makes up most of the song, pretty much, I think it is very effective in, at least, if that is where it plays, feels like it would be fitting.
I feel that, yeah. This is really effective at getting your heart rate up, especially as, you know, this would cut in, depending on the context actions of the match. And yeah, I think you could see either way. It does, you know, seem like you'd be running away from a killer, but if it is, you know, to get out, as, you know, it's that final push to victory, that could also work as well.
Though one that I have been assured by YouTube comments is a chase theme. This is Critical Track number 3, Blood Trail. So this heavy bass is doing some real good work in this song, I think. And again, this does feel very chase-like. I saw a couple of comments that were like, this actually does feel like you would hear it in a horror movie. Like while the last survivor is like running away through the woods or something. So, hey, mission accomplished on that. I really, really liked this one when I heard. I think the title is likely a reference to the fact that when you get hit once, I think, you are bleeding now, which means you are dripping blood on the ground and leaving a trail that the killer can follow to find you. So, I think that's a pretty good implementation of referencing that in the title here. I don't know. This is a really cool song, I think. It sounds, like I said, very horror movie, and that's the point. It's great.
Absolutely. Especially with the like they'll definitely get you in that mindset of you are being hunted. Neat to kind of see that tie into, like, you know, the game mechanics that help keep the meta fresh and things varied with what you can do versus what the killer can do. But yeah, if they're, granted, I'm sure, yeah, the chase themes being different for the different DLC characters and have it be super special to them, especially if they, you know, pay a lot of attention to the franchises and make it really, really custom there. For a standard one with some of the starting killers, yeah, that's some good nervous tension music to go with it.
We'll actually be talking about one of those licensed killers chase songs later on in the cutting room floor. So be ready for that. It's for exactly the killer you think it is, having listened to the rest of this episode. So then I wanted to pick one that was less like, oh God, get away, and more like tense. And I think the one that does the best overall tension on the soundtrack is Critical Track number 4. This is Hiding. According to the one comment on the video, this is apparently a killer song, but it might be. So Dead by Daylight has a mechanic known as the terror radius. I mentioned it earlier with the last song. And basically what that means is there is an area around them where when a survivor has entered that area, a survivor now knows that they have entered that area. And some characters like hide it completely. Like Michael doesn't have one or has one, but it's very small and it also does not tell the survivor where he is. But I believe all the killers have it to some extent, and I assume that's what this is. It's there's someone in your terror radius, or you are in the killer's terror radius, maybe. I don't know. But I think this song does a great job at just sort of tension, because it's just what you hear in whatever the clip ends up being, just this constant driving dun 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 dun. And it fits really, really well. It definitely feels like a scene where you would be hiding, say, in a locker, trying not to breathe too hard to give yourself away.
Yeah, I like how even with, it's supposed to be just like a tense but not bombastic action sort of piece, it still has tempo to it. Like, whether that could be your heartbeat, it could be footsteps, it could be all sorts of things, but it still has good pace to it. It's not as prominent or pronounced as other pieces maybe, but it's still there with the hiding motif. So I think that's really neat, and it's nice to hear the difference with that. And it's just good to have this kind of piece here.
And one that seems to be a song that plays when you're being chased as a survivor, based on YouTube comments. Again, YouTube comments are my only context for where these play. Because it sounds like the soundtrack is so dynamic and constantly changing that it's kind of hard to pinpoint where they play. But this is Critical Track number 5, Ritual. Now, the other chase themes we heard were more the killer is on the hunt, they're coming, and this is more, no, you need to leave right now. You need to get away right now. That is the vibe I get from this one. It has more of a fearful vibe than a, just tense and sort of... do you get what I mean? Like, it feels more like it's from the perspective of the person that is absolutely terrified.
Yeah, there are more layers here. It's more chaotic. It's more dissonant. So I could feel there's more the fear as opposed to just calm, cool, collected, but tense. So that there's that. You're right. I think it's a really good point to note how dynamic is this soundtrack. It'd be interesting to watch a match, but just listen to the music and how it changes, because these all kind of feel like the same sort of palette. Like, the brush is making the different strokes and it's, using the same kinds of instruments, but yeah, how does it flow from one situation to the next? That'd be interesting.
I genuinely am not sure how the game manages to differentiate between the killer is near you and the killer is chasing you, or the killer just sees you, or they're walking by you, but it does all of that. And I find it extremely interesting the way it does that. Or specifically as the killer, how does it differentiate between I see the survivor and I am actively chasing the survivor? I don't know. But it's very interesting the way it does that. 4 tracks on the cutting room floor. I got one more that, again, I'm not 100% where it plays, but the first track I picked is Tracking the Prey. I mean, I'm going to assume it's a Chase song. It sounds like a Chase song. Not sure which side it would be on, though the electric guitar, or I guess, would that be an electric bass? I don't actually know. It sounds more like a bass, I think. Whatever it is, gives it more of a killer feeling to it. And I really, really dig this song. Apparently, also, according to the comments, it plays when you hover over the icon on PlayStation, on PS5. This is the song that plays. So it is apparently a favorite at Behavior, at least. And I thought it was really cool, but it just barely missed being on the Critical 5.
Good percussion work on this one. Yeah, pairing it with the bass is super smart. It's not doing too much, but for this kind of theme, I don't know if it necessarily has to. The elements stand out enough.
Gives it a nice crunchy feeling overall.
Yeah, good way to describe it.
And the other track on the cutting room floor, this is one of the licensed tracks for one of the licensed killers. This is The Shape Lurks. So this is the terror radius theme, the search theme, the chase theme of Michael Myers. It goes in multiple sort of movements, much like the original song, because it is based on a piece of the score for the original 1978 Halloween, which is very simple because if you don't know anything about that movie's soundtrack, it's just John Carpenter and a keyboard. That's the whole soundtrack. And this is the other very memorable piece from that score, specifically because it plays during the climax of the film where Laurie is like running across the street and Michael's just determinedly following her. And it works extremely well as a chase theme, I guess. You couldn't pick anything else. And this is mostly here because when else am I going to get the chance to talk about the Halloween score? We already talked about the Halloween theme back in Edith Finch. But, like, come on, favorite horror movie, there's a piece of the score in the game. I need to talk about it.
Yeah, those high-pitched synths that have that dissonance and just din, 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 din. Yeah, that'll just grate at you and unnerve you. If the rest of the instruments weren't doing that already, this is really neat to kind of hear how an icon gets their score and their music interpreted in the game, and it sounds like it's a good one to pick.
Apparently, this is like the scariest song to hear, one of the scariest songs to hear because of how I explained Michael's terror radius thing earlier, in that he has a much smaller one, and it does not actually indicate to the player how close he is to you. So, for all you know, he's right behind you at all times. And, yeah. Man, Halloween's really good. I haven't watched it yet this year. I should do that. So what will I never forget about Dead by Daylight? When I think about Dead by Daylight nowadays, I more think like, who could still be in the game, license-wise? And personally, I think the only two, like, glaring absences that aren't Jason, who I don't think is gonna, like I said, if he was gonna be in this game, he'd already be in the game. But I think Terminator is one of them. And also Predator. If Xenomorph's going to be in there, then Predator is a possibility, I feel like.
I think those are good picks. It's just, how are their rights tied up? And are they making other games based off it? There's the Predator asymmetrical multiplayer game that some Sony PlayStation studios they were making that. So, like, there was that. So I guess, what's tied up in what is the question, I guess. But those are good picks.
And I mean, Terminator, I don't think is entirely out of the realm of possibilities, specifically because they seem to really like putting him in stuff, considering he was in the last Mortal Kombat game as a DLC character.
Right, yeah.
So, but those are like the only two classic I want to say slasher film. Predator's not really a slasher film. The original Terminator very much is, but with guns instead of knives. I feel like there's probably people at Behavior that would be like, well, you want us to put Arnold Schwarzenegger in our game? Cool, let's do that right now. But it could also just be the no-skin robot version of a Terminator. Who knows? I would personally love to see the Scissorman and Jennifer from Clock Tower in this game.
Oh, yeah.
Do it, you cowards. That's the only other, game monster that I can think that would be a perfect fit. Because, again, they already have Pyramid Head, and they already have Nemesis, and Wesker for some reason.
And the chase theme, could you imagine, is the bow, 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 bow.
It's got one built in.
This is so good.
I would buy that. I have bought 2 pieces of DLC for Dead by Daylight in my life, and it's Halloween and Silent Hill, and I would buy the Clock Tower DLC. I'm just putting that out there. I'd buy it. Another thing that I usually think about for Dead by Daylight was actually something that happened a couple years ago, when the killer, the twins, were first teased. The teaser trailer had a scream that sounded very, very similar to the Wendigo from Until Dawn, leading some people to think that it was going to be the Wendigo from Until Dawn, because not only did it sound like it, the teaser showed a snowy mountain area. But no, it was an original killer. And also, looking into it, I feel like it's unlikely that it would have been the Wendigo, because it is widely believed that the Hag is directly inspired by the myth of the Wendigo already. So, they already have something there. But it's just a really neat game that I will play maybe once every 2 years, and then I will uninstall it and wait until they release another character I really like. But they've almost run out of those, so I have no real, even Nemesis, while I like Resident Evil, I didn't buy the Resident Evil DLC, and I have zero connection to Wesker. I've never played one where Wesker is actually, the villain. I've never played Resident Evil 5. I don't really plan to. Or 6. I definitely don't plan to. But, maybe if the Scissorman does get added in, that'll be the next time I play the game, with some of our friends. Last time I played was when Pyramid Head came out, so it's been a very long while. So, for our transition, usually we cover a fan remix or a fan cover, but I couldn't not pick this. When Pyramid Head came out, they actually brought Akira Yamaoka in to do his own version of the Dead by Daylight theme. And that's really cool. Obviously, Akira Yamaoka, one of my favorite composers in the industry. How was I supposed to not pick that? So we're going to play that, and we'll be right back, so please enjoy.
And now for something totally different, not inspired by any horror franchises at all. Let's talk about the media franchise monster that is Pokemon, with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. We are almost there with covering a mainline Pokemon game from each of its generations.
Which one are we missing still?
Well, we've covered Generation 1 with Red and Blue in episode 42 on the show. In Generation 2, we talked about Pokemon Crystal in episode 55. We have not covered a Generation 3 game on the Game Boy Advance with either Ruby and Sapphire or Emerald or Fire Red Leaf Green. But we have talked about Generation 4 with Diamond and Pearl in episode 19. And Heart Gold Soul Silver, the Gen 4 remake of Gen 2 in episode 199. When it came to Generation 5, Pokemon Black and White was in episode 89. Pokemon X and Y for Generation 6 was also covered in episode 199. And then Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which was the Gen 6 remake of Gen 3. That was in episode 147. Generation 7 with Sun and Moon, episode 118. And then Generation 8 with Sword and Shield. That was in episode 147 as well. So with Generation 9 of Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet was released worldwide on November 18th, 2022 for Nintendo Switch. The game is developed by Game Freak, and it's published by the Pokémon Company in Japan, but by Nintendo in the rest of the world. And you ought to know what Pokemon is. By now, it's your starter third-person JRPG. What makes Scarlet and Violet different is that you have open worlds in this game, which include both urban areas and open wilderness without borders between the two. See, Sword and Shield had the wild area, but you'd still have these kind of break boundaries and borders that would kind of help with the loading, but Scarlet and Violet tries to have the open world. In addition to this, progression through the games are up to the players. There are 3 story paths that are available to choose from, and the objectives within these story routes can be done in any order. Though there's a suggested order, I think it's really a shame that these are all still locked leveled, so you probably should go through in a general order. You can have some fluctuation, but you can't necessarily go challenging the last one right at the start. The levels don't scale quite like that.
Boy, can you not.
Maybe in a future game, but not for this one. No, this generation's new hook of a gimmick mechanic is the Terastal phenomenon, which allows a Pokemon to transform, get some crystal design going for it, but a Pokemon has a secret Terra type in this game. More often than not, it's one of the types that they already are, but more rare types of Pokemon, well, they have a Terra type, and so say you might have a Ghost type, but their secret Terra type is electric, and this could be exploited in some means based on what their moveset is. Could change the weaknesses and strengths of the Pokemon entirely. It's an interesting type mix-up, but that's the big thing for this game is terrestrialization and the Terra type. A gameplay element called Let's Go allows the player to send out a Pokemon to roam the overworld and automatically battle wild Pokemon, along with optional co-op there for up to 3 players. It makes the performance hit even more than it already does, but the option is there. And the games introduce 112 new Pokemon, including new regional types, like a new ground and poison type for your son Wooper.
Yes, it's beautiful. And especially what he evolves into is beautiful.
It's not Quagsire. It's something else entirely. There's also convergent evolutions, though Wikipedia expressed it in this way. I don't know if it's ever described quite this way in the game, but think Wiglet. Wiglet is a Pokemon in this game. Well, it's a water type, and it has similarities to that Gen 1 Diglett, but it's not a regional variant of Diglett. It's its own creature, Wiglet. There are also Paradox Pokemon as you get closer to the end of the game, and these are time-displaced creatures from either the past or the future. In Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, you attend either the Naranja, or the Orange Academy in Pokemon Scarlet, or the Uva Academy, the Grape Academy in Pokemon Violet. The Academy has an annual treasure hunt, in which students are encouraged to seek something they treasure by exploring the Paldea region. and this is a part of the Pokemon world inspired by the Iberian Peninsula, or Spain and Portugal. After choosing your starter Pokemon, either Sprigatito, Fuecoco, or Quaxley, you encounter the legendary Pokemon Koraidon in Scarlet, or Miraidon in Violet, and they join and assist you as a travel mount for the open world, despite having lost their ability to battle. You are then encouraged to participate in 3 stories. There's Victory Road, Starfall Street, and Path of Legends. In Victory Road, Nemona, the champion-ranked trainer that rivals the player, frequently battling them throughout their journey, asks that they complete all 8 of the Paldea region's Pokemon gyms. It's your usual gym leader beat the Elite Four champion challenge. Starfall Street begins after the player helps the shy schoolgirl Penny stand up against Team Star, a group responsible for academy bullying, when Cassiopeia, the founder of Team Star, calls the player and enlists them for Operation Starfall, which aims to force Team Star to disband by defeating all 5 of its squad bosses. So, the nefarious team part of the story. In the Path of Legends, Arvin asks the player to join him in locating the 5 legendary flavored Herba Mystica. To obtain each Herba Mystica, the player and Arvin must team up to defeat a Titan Pokemon, an abnormally large Pokemon powered up by the Herba Mystica. Not only do these HMs...
Oh my god, I never caught that.
Yep. Not only do they restore the health of Arvin's injured pet Mabostiff, they also restore the world traversal abilities of your Idon mount. So the big questions: can you become Paldea region's new champion by defeating the gym leaders, Elite Four, and the current champion? What are the origins of Team Star, and who is Cassiopeia? And how did Mabostiff get hurt? And how is Arvin tied to Area Zero, the forbidden crater in the center of Paldea? Joe, here's where I ask you, what are our experiences with Pokémon Scarlet and Violet?
So obviously this game came out a mess. Like a huge mess. Absolutely broken, runs terribly, looks really bad. Like, oh my god, some of the textures in this game are... Oh boy. It would get a good grade as a student project. But the worst part about these games being very broken and buggy and ugly is that they're good games.
They're so fun to play. They're so good. Yeah, it's really tough when you ask a Pokemon open world to load all the creatures in and then have them show up on the map and have them be, not just random encounters. It's a lot to ask and load in off the front, and that's got to be tough, especially when you don't have the time to optimize it, because the way Pokemon has operated is that there's a continuous cycle and need for content, not only with games and merchandise and anime tie-ins, and there's no time to just let a main installment cook.
Game's got to be out by Christmas. If it's not out before the holidays, then we will literally we'll go bankrupt tomorrow.
Says the most successful media franchise of all time.
But yeah, I like these games, and I really like their soundtracks. We'll talk about that. But boy howdy, the anger and upset that fans had towards the quality of these games in terms of like technical quality and stuff and visual quality. I mean, I was playing the DLC like 2 weeks ago, and I rode past a like mountainside that had a fountain built into the side, like a rock fountain with a pool in the middle and all that. And the fountain looked like it was from a different video game connected to this giant rock in the scenery. And I cannot fault anybody for being upset about that. I'm still upset about that, despite the fact that I really like these games.
There is a lot to be upset about, but, handle it responsibly. I know that's a lot to ask for certain fan bases out there on the internet. But it just goes to show, like, that's the problem, is that they don't have enough time to let these games cook and optimize, and maybe consult with Monolith Soft a bit on your open world.
Maybe let them just make the open world. How about you just let them make it?
Something like that, because it's good to finally get to this point in Pokemon, but we need a lot of other things going in that direction before you really create the best experience possible. Because a lot of the underpinnings as far as the gameplay goes and the story goes, there's a lot of great stuff here. The music is great. We had this soundtrack as our number one best soundtrack of 2022 last year. Looking back on it, I know it'd be up highly. I don't know if it was some recency bias or what, but
it might have been recency bias. It's still one of my favorites, but
it's still one of the best of last year. But it's still really good, and we're gonna look forward to going through the music here. But the technical problems are real, and it's a big problem and big disappointment with it.
You know what else bothers me about Scarlet and Violet?
Hit me with it.
Make up your minds about whether you want voice acting or not.
Oh, sure.
You cannot. I'm fine if Pokemon never gets voice acting. Whatever. Who cares? But then you can't have cutscenes that look like they were made with voice acting in mind.
Yes. Oh.
Because they're really weird and awkward to watch.
Especially like some of the big tension stuff at the very end of the game. Doesn't work that much. So, unsurprisingly, Nintendo a bit mum on the development of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. There's not much there out there, to the point where it says, oh yes, the game started development in late 2019, around the time that Pokemon Sword and Shield released. As one generation ships, start work on the next generation. It kind of makes sense, both on Switch. Then the game was announced during Pokemon Day on the Pokemon Presents broadcast on February 27th, 2022. Throughout the game's pre-release marketing, several in-universe videos were published by the Pokemon Company, such as a camera trap to reveal Grafaiai, a web seminar to reveal Wiglet, a live stream with Idol and gym leader Iono to reveal Bellibolt, and a short found footage trailer to reveal Grievard.
I love Iono so much. She is one of the two gym leaders of this game that I would die for.
Obviously, the other one, I am blanking on his name.
Is the one that wants to die. Larry.
Yeah, Larry. Why was I thinking Norman? I'm like, he's a normal trainer. He looks like a dad.
Norman's the gym leader in Gen 3.
I know, but let's making the comparison. Does Norman look like he wants to die? Kind of. I don't know. But he's very daddish.
Not as much as... I think there's a reason why the adult fan base of Pokemon latched super hard to Larry.
Absolutely so. Yup. On September 29th, 2022, singer Ed Sheeran released a song called Celestial, which was in collaboration with the Pokemon Company, and it appeared in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Celestial would eventually be used in the game's credits. We're not going to cover it. It is totally out of place and has nothing to do with the game, I think, but it's there, and it's a partnership with Ed Sheeran.
I completely forgot that was a thing.
Right? Yeah. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet received mixed reviews, with Metacritic averages of 72 and 71 for Scarlet and Violet, respectively. Don't know why they have different ones, but at least it's close. And this made the games the lowest rated mainline games in the series. Now, the games were praised for their open world formula and their story, while the graphics, technical problems at launch, and confusing progression systems received criticism. That's all super fair. But it doesn't matter, because within 3 days of its release, The games had sold over 10 million copies worldwide, including 4.05 million in Japan alone. The sales figure was the highest of any software on any Nintendo platform within 3 days, and the best launch of any console-exclusive game in history.
The industry is broken, and I'm part of the problem.
Why would they change if they keep selling so many titles? By June 2023, the games had sold 22.66 million copies, making it the 7th best-selling Switch game. It has yet to eclipse Pokémon Sword and Shield's 25.92 million copies, though obviously that game had a 3-year head start.
And was done when it came out. Mostly, sort of.
Kind of, sort of,
more
mostly.
Than Scarlet and Violet.
Yeah, that's fair. Not really an awards darling, this game, that's for sure. Though at the Famitsu/Dengeki Game Awards, it won Best Scenario and Best Character for Arven. Would not have put Arven as a Best Character winner that year, but okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have voted for Arven. God, I like Arven just fine. He's not the top of my list.
Definitely a Japanese industry slanted award show, and that's okay, because it was nominated for Game of the Year, Best RPG, and Best Music. The legacy of Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, a DLC expansion pass storyline, The Hidden Treasure of Area Zero, was announced on Pokémon Day in February 2023. The first part, the Teal Mask, which is intended to be completed during the game, released recently on September 13th, 2023. And the second part, which is intended to be more post-game, called the Indigo Disc, is still planned for release in winter 2023. Which, let's be honest, push it to the start of next year. It's okay, but maybe you've got an anime storyline lined up. I don't know.
That's weird to know now because there's a new anime that does not seem to be attached to the games at all.
But they have the turtle Pokemon Terapagos or whatever his name is. Like, there's a plot line that lined up. They've still got that synergy, but yeah, it's not Ash anymore.
Which, speaking of the DLC, look, I get it. You want to make it. Speak of Teal Mask specifically, why would you make a mid-game DLC that comes out a year after the game came out?
So they can bundle release a package with everything together and re-release it that way for new players.
I'm going to fight them all. Teal Mask is fine. It's kind of boring, honestly. But like the legendaries it added are fun. And I like the characters I like one of the characters. Sorry, I don't like the boy. He actually sucks. And he's going to be seemingly they're both going to be in Indigo Disc, I assume. Both of them should have just been a post-game DLC. The game came out a year ago.
For sure. Let's talk about one of the composers for this game, because out of the 7 in the game, he's the only one we haven't covered on the show before. And that would be Teruo Taniguchi. Not much out there on Teruo Taniguchi, but he was born in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan. He is part of Super Sweep Co. Ltd., the music production studio there. And that's about it. You can follow him on Twitter at GAS_DENCHI. Gas_Denchi. Okay. All right. He's composed music for Naruto Clash of Ninja Revolution 2, 3D Dot Game Heroes, Giga Wrecker and Giga Wrecker Alt, Pokemon Quest, the Q-Bits Minecraft-inspired looking game that I had forgotten about. He is seemingly the music lead on Tetris 99, and he, of course, composed some music for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. He's also done some sound effects work throughout his career on Stella Deus, The Gate of Eternity, Okamiden, Pokemon Black and White 2, Pac-Man 99, and also in 2022, a release there, Pokemon Legends Arceus. So there is music composed in this game for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet by Minako Adachi. We talked about her work on episode 118 for Pokemon Sun and Moon. Junichi Masuda, of course, the original Pokemon composer back in episode 42 for his work on Red and Blue. Go Ichinose, talked about him on episode 19 for his work on Diamond and Pearl. Hiromitsu Maeba, talked about his work on episode 220 for the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. And then there's Teruo Taniguchi. Also Hitomi Sato, her work talked about on episode 147 for Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And Toby Fox returns for composition work for Game Freak in this game, of course. For his work in Undertale, we talked about him in episode 24. So that's a whole lot of Pokemon series veterans and also a couple newcomers. But there is still no released Pokemon Super Music Collection soundtrack for Scarlet and Violet yet. And as a result, there's no direct credit confirmation on these different tracks and who composed what. There are different statements made that fans have collected. So there are guesses, and that's kind of what we'll put here. Some outright confirmations, some fan assumptions. But there's no big official soundtrack release to directly tie up and credit on a track-by-track basis. So we'll kind of run with that as we go to the 5 critical tracks for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And let's start out with this first main theme, critical track number 1, South Province. This track is composed by Toby Fox and Minako Adachi, though Toby Fox says that this was originally intended, he composed it in mind with it to be the Academy theme, as this big, heroic, triumphant theme. And it ends up being used in the opening wild area as you start to explore the South Province. Though it is the leitmotif that would end up defining the game, it transitions well into the wild battle theme out there. It changes up in certain ways as you go to different provinces throughout the world. Reminds a lot of people of the Great Sea in Wind Waker with these kind of triumphant middies in a way, but it's a really good sounding theme. And I think in a game that I guess does have a main theme, a title theme, whatever, I would treat this more as the main theme for the game. It's certainly what comes to mind first when I'm like, what's Scarlet and Violet's theme music?
Being told that it was originally intended to be the Academy theme, I can hear it. It does sound maybe a little bit more fitting than what we got. Granted, I really like the Academy theme that we got, but this feels more like big, open Academy vibes than the electric guitar. I don't really associate the electric guitar with, school.
Right.
So yeah, that I can definitely see that having been the case. Also, I've never thought about the comparison to Great Sea, but yeah, that I can hear that.
Number 2 on the Critical 5 is a secret banger. You'll hopefully hear what I mean, as critical track number 2 for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is Battle Team Star Grunt. God, how do you pick 30 seconds out of this whole piece? It's just an amazing song. I think one of my favorites in the game, and it happens to be composed by Teruo Taniguchi. So there you go. There he is. He was supposedly responsible for all, quote, Team Star related BGM. So there you go. Might I remind you, with the title, that this is just a grunt battle theme for Team Star. The whole piece has this 2-minute, 12-second loop that it just gets into this screaming guitar solo, outside of the clip. It just builds and builds, and these rave-like instruments that just keep the melody and action driving forward. And yet the battle with the grunts are so easy in this game. Like, the battle won't even last 30 seconds, so you won't even get to hear the full piece, but the hype is real with this one, and it's secretly one of the best songs in the game.
Now, I personally prefer the Team Star boss, but I will not disagree that this is a secret banger, as you said. Because, yeah, there's no universe where the grunt theme should be this good. I feel like the beginning of the song, maybe I'm insane, it feels almost like a musical homage to the Rival Battle theme from Gen 2. And I don't know why that would be here, but if that's what it is, I appreciate it.
It's just so good, and Taniguchi really delivered. Track number 3 on the Critical 5 for Scarlet and Violet. Let's do another Toby Fox theme, and this one is called Terra Raid Battle. It's really interesting to think how the Terra raids are really optional, so you may not hear this one a whole lot, but if you're like me, and you did a lot of Terra raids for grinding, for items and experience, and you get a lot of those experience shards that you can just pour into power level right at the end, that's super helpful. Granted, I never really did any of the post-game, level 7 Terra raids or any of the stuff they did post-launch. Never really did any of that. But you hear this theme a lot, and definitely has Toby Fox written all over it. And the clip here shows the triumphant end in a way. Kind of more, imagine playing it while you throw the Pokeball to capture the defeated Terra Raid Pokemon. But the catchy melody outside the clip of da 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 da, it's gonna get you. It's gonna be an earworm, and it's a good thing. Toby Fox does a good job of writing that kind of music.
I don't have a huge connection to this song, specifically because I didn't really do Terra raids at all. I don't know. It was the same in Sword and Shield. I just did not have any interest.
I feel you. So it's hit or miss, and I guess for me making this list here, it's good here. Something totally different though is number 4 on the Critical 5. And you like jazz? Because this track is Battle Gym Leader. Piece is composed by Minako Adachi, and surprise, it's the gym leader boss battle theme. Now, it's a piece that is actually quite dynamic, depending on what's going on in the piece. Are you down to your last stand? Are they about to, not Dynamax, that's Sword and Shield, are you about to terrestrialize their last Pokemon? Sometimes to their detriment. In a way, I felt like there were some terrestrializations that were oh, you actually made it worse for yourself there, gym leader, but okay.
You actually made it easier for me to destroy you.
Right? So that was kind of weird. Like, oh, it was poor Larry. His Staraptor just becoming another normal type was like, oh, you lose the flying. Oh, that's unfortunate for you. Like, I don't know, it was kind of weird. Anyway, the music here. I really like this jazzy part. It's super different than what you'd expect for a gym leader boss battle, but it's nice and fresh. Though eventually you'd get the like that's like, okay, we're bringing that back from Sword and Shield. I get it for the end of the battle, but
I don't think it works nearly as well in this game.
I agree. You're not in a stadium. Okay, you got a crowd around you, but it's not the big stadium soccer like environment. Sorry, football. We were in England. I mean, Galler. The jazz stuff here really works, though. It's probably hit or miss with most people, but I really dig it.
This is such a weird song for this. Like, there's no other. Even the comments in the YouTube video are like, this is so weird. I don't understand why it's like this, but I love this song. And I also really love the dynamic part where it builds with every Pokemon they send out, for the most part. But yeah, this middle section that's in the clip, that's the best part of the song. Just by far, 100%. It sounds nothing like any Pokemon battle theme that has ever existed up to this point. And honestly, I think that makes it stand out in a good way overall, though, like I said, third phase is... I miss the second phase immediately when it starts playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Though the most unique Pokemon piece, maybe in the franchise's history, is number 5 here on the Critical 5. And this is Area Zero. Toby Fox is cooking with this one. Could you believe this music theme playing as you descended into the great crater of Area Zero? And it hits you with this deep bass, the choir, and then the theremin coming in. Just an incredible music theming and scoring for this final creepy area of the game, especially again as it would go into the battle theme and all of the arc stuff going on there. My goodness, this was the musical standout moment, I think, going through the game.
Again, sounds nothing like any song in Pokemon up to this point, though not quite as much of a departure as the Gym Leader theme. But it's still very up there. You can definitely hear the Toby Fox in here.
Yeah.
If this was just chiptune, you could definitely just hear this in Undertale.
Oh man, and Brand Flakes, we've talked about a great, YouTube remixer does an amazing 8-bit version of this song. Oh, so good. We've got some tracks on the cutting room floor. Joe, you got 2? Hit me with them.
Well, my first one, the actual title is a spoiler, which I see that you have one of those too on yours. So we will just go with calling it Battle Cassiopeia. This is a popular song, but I also know a lot of people that don't really love it, which I could hear I could see the synths being described as shrill. I love this goddamn song. I don't love the character. I think they're fine, I guess. Maybe I'll put them over Arven. Maybe. But this song just, it sounds I don't know what it reminds me of, but just this heavy, like, bass drum throughout the whole thing, and especially the part of the clip, like, this song's cool, this battle is cool. It's a good song.
For sure. The techno house rave energy is incredible. I will just say, though, how was there not a new Eevee evolution in this game if that's what you're gonna do with the battle? Just some food for thought.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. And my other track on the cutting room floor is one that only I seem to think is very, very good. Well, not only I, but I know quite a few of our friends kind of disagreed with me. But this is my show, and I get to do whatever I want. And they can't stop me. Neither can the law. This is Battle Elite 4. I probably meant, it's been so long I don't remember, but I probably mentioned it in Sun and Moon when we talked about that. About how I really actually like the Elite Four theme of those games because they make the Elite Four feel intimidating. Like the others make them feel like, oh, it's an epic thing, you're making your way to the championship finally, and that's fine. But this and the Sun and Moon Elite Four theme make them sound like you should be nervous about the fight that you are going into. These are the best of the best. This is what it should sound like. And it's the only other one, this one, that I think nails that sort of tone. And just the tension of this song. It may not be the most triumphant song in the world. It's not really trying to be. But the fact that it is trying to be this tense, teeth-grinding, nervous theme, I love it. Feels intimidating. I want them to scare me, damn it. Even though one of them's a child.
Shout out to Rika. Such a good Elite Four trainer. You also had the glitch, right, when you played where it freezed like the first few seconds and just kept that on loop, right?
Not me. I got very lucky that it did not happen to me, but we know very many people that it did happen to.
Yeah, that did not happen with me either. It's a good theme. I think there are Elite Four themes that are better personally, but it's a good one for sure. Notable in that regard for sure. Composed by Junichi Masuda and Minako Adachi. Again, shout out Teruo Taniguchi. The Cassiopeia theme. He's a team star. Yeah.
He really likes his synths.
A lot. So good. So good. For me, a couple tracks on the cutting room floor. I have the first one here. This is The Academy. It is also composed by Toby Fox and Minako Adachi, like the South Province theme. But this is what Toby Fox ended up going with for this version of the Academy. It's a very dynamic piece that changes not only how far you are in the story, but where you are in the Academy. But it has this catchy little melody going through it. And it's, again, Toby Fox, good at those little melodic hooks that will stay in your ear.
I really like the intro to this theme, and just the general electric guitar part is really good. Again, I don't really know if it screams school to me, but it is a very good song nonetheless.
Absolutely, and I feel like you should go back to the Academy. You should do things there. It'll help also with the legendary hunt at the end of the game with the ruined treasures. The other one for me on the cutting room floor is Battle Final Boss. obviously titled to avoid spoilers. Some would also say Area Zero Lab, because what happens when you get to the depths of Area Zero and what will you discover? A Pokemon final boss fight like the series has not had. That whole story just takes turns that is quite unlike the franchise. But when that trainer is sending out Master Balls against you, it's a good sense of the scale that they're going for. And wow, it's a moment, and the music carries over so many similarities. So of course it is also composed by Toby Fox. A lot of Area Zero leitmotifs and theming and instruments being used here. Great moment. Just more shouting out the moment.
Weirdly, at the very end of the game, it just suddenly becomes one of the better stories in Pokemon.
Yeah, just for the last little bit.
A game series not known for its very amazing stories. Like, not that Pokemon stories are bad, it's just they sure exist for the most part. But yeah, this theme is super, super good. The final boss is really, really good. The story of that part is extremely good. Like, everything about this whole sequence is absolutely fantastic, and this song is a big part of that.
What will I never forget about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet? I feel like I need to have some more distance, maybe go back to playing the game a little bit more before I have anything that I'll really never forget, but it's certain music tracks. The soundtrack really stands out, and it's that Area Zero ending moment that just kind of throws you for a loop. That's what I think I will never forget about the game.
For me, it's that it was extremely broken, and Twitter was very funny for like a good month. Twitter was extreme. That's the only good thing that comes out of games coming out super broken, is that Twitter is really fun for a little while. You saw that with Cyberpunk. That happened with some of the Assassin's Creed games. That happened with this one. Like, it's just fun when games are broken in goofy ways, even though they really shouldn't be when they are made by the Pokémon Company. I really like Scarlet and Violet, which again is really frustrating, actually. I love Iono. I especially love, I don't remember what he goes by now, Chris Wolfhard, I think, on Twitter, pointed out that Iono is the best gym leader they've ever designed because it paints this messed up future where you could potentially be in line at the grocery store behind Gargura. Because she's basically a VTuber, but she's not, because in universe she's using her actual face, but she is designed like a VTuber. In fact, I would be willing to bet money that the reason why she has sharp teeth is because of Gura. 100% I would put money down on that. I love the fact that if you buy one version of the game, you get a motorcycle, and if you buy the other version of the game, you get a pale imitation of a motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
I bought Violet specifically because I wanted the one whose wheel turned so it didn't look stupid.
I forgot to ask that. I was going to ask. I got Violet as well. That's a good point.
I don't hate Koraidon. I think he's fine. But Miraidon's wheel turns when I ride him. So that is legitimately the only reason why I bought the version I did. There is no other reason. And also lastly, it introduced two of the best designed Pokemon in years. The first being Clodsire. I love him. I would die for Clodsire. I would take a bullet for that boy. And Tinkaton. The whole Tinkaton line is amazing. And also way overpowered, actually, kind of.
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's so good. There's so many good things about this game for sure. And it's a good way to wrap up spooky season with Dead by Daylight and Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Well, they're all games that end in T. That works. But that'll do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Show is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel, but it's that MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. So Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted, but you can find Original Soundchat and Smasher Pieces wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe, including Spotify. We have a podcast feed of episodes, but also a video game music playlist. If we talk about a video game music track on the show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this big playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Well, Dead by Daylight is, of course, on Spotify. Pokemon's not.
It's Nintendo.
Pokemon's the most frustrating one in that regard because it is on Apple Music.
Oh, that's true. But if they don't have a soundtrack for Scarlet and Violet, it's not on Apple Music. So there you go.
Speaking of Nintendo and their frustration, they announced a Fire Emblem Engage official soundtrack release, and it's just really maddening to look at it and be like, this'll never come to streaming services, ever.
Oh yeah, must be nice. Never gonna hear it digitally. Well, when you're done listening to the music and all of that and the show, you can find us on social media at Soundchat OST for the show. You can leave some feedback for us, give us some suggestions what we miss, and also games to cover in the future. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Ryuji Sasai.
And I'll be talking about Francis Maya. To play us out, I love that Team Star Grunt battle, so let's find a remix on YouTube, wherever. You know, we're just going to go back to the Family Jewels. Well, he does such a good cover with his metal guitar work, and it's just a delight, so please enjoy that. Thank you so much for listening this week on Original Sound Chat. We'll see you next time. Take care.